Well, the organization, it's actually not a 501c3, it's an annual conference. We're planning on becoming a 501c3 hopefully in the next 2 years to make our mission more sustainable. But TEDx Redmond is an annual all by kids for kids conference, and we've had over 60 speakers across 3 years. This is our 4th year.
How old were you when you started writing?
I was 3 years old when I started reading, and then I think 4 when I started writing longhand.
And, what was the first thing you wrote?
The first thing I wrote was this really awful short story about a boy who went to a diner and ordered a cheeseburger. I think that between the ages of 4 to 7, if I were to study that time period as a genre, it would be like the food porn series, because it was just really intense descriptions of food from all corners of the world.
And what are, a lot of the things you would write about?
Well,
let's say before 10.
Once I moved away from food, thank God, I think I kind of went into this historical fiction fantasy time where I was really, really into creating other worlds or princesses, sort of like a stereotypical girl, except my princesses always cut off other people's heads and went on insane adventures, dressed up as boys and the like. So I was really into reversing roles when I could and just being different, sometimes for the sake of being different.
So, all these conferences, heavy topics, big subjects, blah, 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 being an adult, and then you love to run across the golf course. Do you feel like you've missed out on, being a kid sometimes?
I wouldn't say I've missed out. I feel like this is definitely a different way of being a kid than most of my friends, but it's an insanely awesome way. And I know a lot of people who probably wouldn't trade their lives for mine just because I travel around a lot and I miss school sometimes, but there are definitely a lot of people who are very envious of the opportunities that I have. I try not to measure my own satisfaction in my life with the number of people who are jealous of me, but definitely I feel really lucky to have all the opportunities that I have.
And how are you a kid?
I'm a kid, well, I try to stay a kid by doing insane things sometimes, by not always doing what my parents tell me to do. I have gotten in trouble even still for doing things that are fairly reminiscent of that 7-year-old, being a gorilla. So, yeah, I think that we all maintain touch with our inner child in different ways.
What do you like best about writing?
One of the things I like best about writing is that it allows you to explore different facets of a person, because there's so much complexity and we only see so much on face level, and I think the introspection that it allows is amazing as well, because I learn about myself every day through writing, and that's something which is difficult to do just through living life, going through work and business and everything. You're definitely a different person as a writer, and I feel like it's one of your most true selves.
Do you feel most teens...
Your arm is hitting the mic, I think.
Do you feel that most teens aren't learning writing or passionate about writing as they should be?
I do think that a lot of teens aren't very passionate about writing. I would credit some of that, or not credit, that sounds positive. I would blame a little bit of that on writing curriculum in most elementary, middle, and high schools, because I remember when my sister went to 7th grade, she was a great writer. She enjoyed poetry, and even essays she wasn't bad at, but she gets this worksheet and it says, here's this stoplight strategy, red light sentences, green light sentences, and I looked at that and I was like, oh my god, seriously, you're teaching writing by breaking up it into these little parts with this stupid acronym to remember a strategy or whatever. Why not just practice and write as much as you can instead of looking at worksheets and filling in blanks? And so if we can preserve the natural passion that kids have for making up stories, we all know kids who make up stories, then I think we'll be in a better place.
So if you had 30 seconds to teach someone how to write who's never written before, what would you tell them?
I would say start with thinking about the most interesting person you can and write as much as you can about them, the interesting things that happen to them, but most importantly find conflict, because that's where all suspense in stories comes from. There is way too much conflict in the world. There can never be enough conflict in a story.
I agree with that. Tell me about some of your accomplishments.
And
don't be afraid to be, you don't have to be modest. You can tell us.
Well, without sounding like my resume, let's see, starting my accomplishments. I guess it would start with publishing my first book, Flying Fingers, second book, Dancing Fingers, third book, Being in Disguise, working on a new book, speaking at the UN, speaking at TED in 2010, speaking here at the X Prize conference, speaking at over 500 schools and classrooms worldwide through video conferencing and in-person teaching, one of my, I wouldn't necessarily call this an accomplishment, rather a great opportunity, going to Sri Lanka with the World Food Program to see kids who were being helped by those missions there, and writing a blog post, raising awareness, being on Good Morning America. So many of these, though, I don't really consider accomplishments in a sense, because they're more great opportunities that I've been lucky to receive.
Let's talk about your first book. How old were you? What was it called? What was it about?
I was 7 years old when I published my first book, Flying Fingers, which was 9 short stories and tips on writing. It was about loving learning through reading and writing, and its goal is to make reading and writing very accessible to young readers.
Is the greatest thing in the world being able to read and write?
There are few things that beat being able to read and write. I think if I could run a 4-minute mile, that would have to go up there somewhere, but yeah, it's the best thing.
I ran a 9-minute mile this morning, which
Congratulations.
was good for me, but not that good in the big picture. I saw one of your speeches, and you mentioned, kids being, the tradition is kids being seen and not heard. Why are you trying to change some societal views?
Children being seen and not heard has been a staple since Victorian times. We've updated a lot of things since then. I feel like it's a big shame that education and how we view kids are two things that seem to still be stuck in that time period. I would say that we're in a time now where the contrast between the opportunities that we can have and we should have through technology, through social media and the internet, the contrast between that and the experience we have oftentimes in school or in the organizations which we work in is too great. So I think that it's really time for adults to take note of what they can learn from young people, because increasingly we have new power in online settings.
Do you think rules are good?
I think that rules are something you can apply universals to. Some rules are good, some rules are fair, some rules aren't.
I want an answer about rules, and you like to talk about outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
Me, I don't follow rules. There are rules, blah, 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 but a lot of times, they're wrong, they're outdated. Tell me how in education a lot of the rules just don't hold up.
Well, I definitely get pissed off about rules in education, because I'm someone who has to turn in absence forms every week whenever I want to go speak somewhere. And another thing is that, in my school district, in my school, you can't do an independent study because our school is too big. And to me, not being able to do an independent study is just a summation of everything that's sort of wrong with the rules, simply because, we don't want you to be an independent thinker. I mean, that's not a good reason, yet that's what I feel is kind of the result. And so, yeah, I think a lot of rules in education really need to be updated.
What is Teach Teachers Tech?
Teach Teachers Tech is a video series I developed over at Google when I was there last August, and it was for the website A Platform for Good. It was really designed to be succinct and to teach teachers tech, as the title is, specifically things that they weren't already familiar with. So it talks about how to use change.org, the online petition maker, as a classroom tool to bring in project-based learning that had real-world impact, and a bunch of other cool things, education, gamification. I came at it with a student's perspective because I felt like this would be more powerful.
Can you adjust your mic real quick?